People who don't watch F1 can be so annoying sometimes. I'm sure I'm not the only F1 fan who finds people who don't watch the sport very annoying. Not because they don't watch F1, but because of when they say things about the sport thinking they know it all when clearly they don't, and they just make themselves look a bit stupid. Anyway, here is some of the most annoying things non-F1 fans say. Before we get into it, subscribe to the channel and let me know if you've ever had any encounters with non-F1 fans who say annoying things and just make themselves look stupid. Let me know in the comments and let's get on with it. So I'm going to get straight into it and start off with the most annoying thing non-F1 fans say, which is F1 drivers are not athletes. As an F1 nerd, there is nothing more annoying than people trying to explain to you why F1 drivers are not athletes. James Roberts. Sorry, James. Anyway, people think driving an F1 car is just like driving your normal car on a Sunday drive, but they have no clue about some of the G-forces F1 drivers go through. What I always try to say to people is, there is a very good reason why you never see a fat F1 driver. Through really fast corners, F1 drivers pull up to 5 Gs, which is almost fighter pilot levels of G-force. The training F1 drivers have to go through just so they're able to drive a car in a race is absolutely brutal. F1 drivers lose up to 11 pounds during a race, which is about 4% of their body weight. This is because of how much drivers sweat during a race because the cockpit is so hot. Bearing in mind they have to wear fire protection overalls, helmets, gloves, and to add on top of that, a really heavy seatbelt that is so heavy F1 drivers cannot put it on themselves and they have to get their race engineers to do it for them. So look at the end of the race in Qatar in 2023. Drivers were so exhausted and dehydrated from the race, they couldn't even get out the car. And if they could get out the car, they couldn't even walk. Like, look at Lance Stroll, he got out of the car, but he couldn't stand up, and you could see him leaning on an ambulance. Also, no ordinary person could even drive an F1 car for more than 3 laps if they're lucky. In fact, they would probably injure themselves doing so. F1 drivers are probably the fittest athletes out of any sport because of the G-forces they have to deal with whilst they're racing. Furthermore, F1 drivers have to have really good reaction times. This is to counteract oversteer and understeer and to avoid a collision with a car going slowly around a really blind bend. Okay, so this point is slightly less annoying and sometimes I can see where people are coming from when they say it. However, when you understand F1 a bit more, you realise it's not just about cars going around in circles. What other sport gets to go 200 miles an hour through the streets of Monaco? In fact, there is nothing more satisfying than watching an F1 car go flat out through the streets of Monaco in qualifying because of how close they get to the walls and how little room there is for error. And when we do see it go wrong and a driver crashes, you always wonder if they're okay. Also, by saying F1 is only cars going around in a circle, it's like saying football players kick a ball about for a field for 90 minutes whilst rolling about on the floor trying to make themselves look stupid. Or how in tennis, all you do is hit a ball with a bat. It's always so interesting to see how strategies play out in the sport. For example, in Hungary 2019, Lewis Hamilton was chasing behind Max Verstappen, and because the track was so narrow, he couldn't overtake him. So what he did, he made an extra pit stop and had to chase down Verstappen for ages. And it left you wondering, is he going to catch him? Is he not going to catch him? And then when he finally caught back up to Verstappen, will he be able to overtake him? Which he did because he had a tyre advantage. Also, what other sport do you get to see cars change their tyres in under 2 seconds? Yes, we do have some really boring races where nothing happens and there's no overtakes. But you also see really boring football matches where there's no goals. And then it is like you're watching people kick a ball around the field for 90 minutes. It sounds stupid. And it's just the same about saying, well, all F1 cars do is drive around in circles for 90 minutes. There is so much more to F1 than just cars driving around in circles. One of the most annoying points is when people say nobody watches F1. F1's one of the most watched sports globally. Okay, it's not as popular as football. However, 750 million people still watch it worldwide. Since 2021, interest in the sport has risen by over 5.7%, which makes F1 the fastest growing sport at the moment. In fairness, Drive to Survive has a lot to do with that, but the sport is in a much better place compared to where it was before 2018. When I was growing up, I had no one to talk to F1 about, however now I've got loads of people I can talk to F1 about. You never see any empty grandstands at races anymore, and Silverstone and Spa always pull in over 450,000 people during the race weekend. No other sport in the world is capable of doing that, even though ticket prices are extremely expensive. F1 is that popular that so many countries, in fact nearly every country, wants to host the race because it is in that much demand. Okay, granted, having the best car does increase your chances of winning the championship, but you've got to have the right driver in the right car to still be able to do so. For example, in 2021, if Mercedes didn't have Lewis Hamilton in the car, then they would be nowhere near in the title fight. And the same goes for Red Bull. If they didn't have Verstappen in the car, they wouldn't have been in the title fight. We've seen so many times in the past where the driver makes a difference. For example, in Brazil last season, Red Bull were nowhere near good enough that weekend. However, Verstappen, who started 13th on the grid, still somehow won the race. And that's because he's one of the best drivers and he was able to make the difference. Do you really think Ferrari would have been so dominant in the 2000s if it wasn't for Schumacher? Probably not. F1 is very much a team sport, and having the right driver with the right team to go along with it makes the perfect mixture for a dominant team. Also, in 2017 and 2018, Mercedes and Ferrari were completely equal on pace, meaning the drivers had to make the difference. Only the best drivers are able to get the best possible lap times out of the car. Think of it like this: if Mercedes had Pastor Maldonado in their car instead of Lewis Hamilton, then they would not have had a chance of winning the driver's title. Vettel would have dominated because he would have been the best driver who would have made all the difference. Anyway, there are just some of the most idiotic things non-F1 fans say. And this list could go on for ages. I get F1 isn't everyone's cup of tea. However, there is nothing more annoying than someone who thinks they know it all, but they don't watch F1, trying to give you a lecture about all of the points I've just risen, when instead they clearly don't know what they are talking about. Let me know in the comments, have you ever had an outrageous take from a non-F1 fan that has really frustrated you? For more F1 news, content and stories, subscribe to the channel. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I'll see you all in the next one.